It's been 5 months after the surgery. I'm catching up with Grace here in Accra after she attended a medical review. Grace recounts her feeling when she received the miraculous call.
In fact, that day,
when I received the call that day, I became very sad. This is because thoughts of undergoing another surgery filled my mind. But I decided to put everything in God's hands. I thank God that the surgery was a success.
She also tells me fears, doubts, and uncertainties crowded her thoughts on the day of the surgery.
Tuesday na oka said Thomas na mo family kono na miyemu hihime edu theater nyina na miyemu hihime.
I was very nervous on the day of the surgery. In fact, I became more frightened when I got to the theater. Today, I thank God for taking the fear out of me. I came out with smiles.
But nyame yi free me mu a me kwa me de sere na ekọ nyame adom so me de sere e de aba nyame na me da na se.
Grace admits some remarkable changes have happened in her life after the surgery. According to her, she no longer feels humiliated because days of houseflies hovering around her are all now in the past.
It's the first no na me na ma bon se once na bo me ho ti se obi a ma pro ade bi e da bola so na apro by the say no me da nyame as say since me yes.
The smell always brought houseflies all around me. But to the glory of God, that situation is over now because of the surgery. I can now walk with so much confidence and happiness. I thank God that He's delivered me out of that horrible and embarrassing situation.
Dear, nipa to me, you know, Miss Metumi, aye, and the BBN name who, with the Yamia Sibibli, Senami, and Nam Sakunyanaso. Because now ya dear a hammy pan, not in fact, not me person me couldn't pum, crash, say me couldn't pum, and once na be betting ye miama, as I said, be a medable as Nama Pro. But I said, dear, Nimper could be a me so miss me yet to know, say Miss Met me a could be. Timmy Danyamia, passing a mere you may face our home.
Except from our latest Hotline documentary, Twisted by Birth. It tells the story of women who hitherto suffered from fistula who have been cured after JoyNews told their stories. But this particular lady, I want us to go back and listen to her, watch her as she was suffering from the condition.
24-year-old Grace Asieko lives at Manford near Apam in the central region. She has the worst form of fistula. Grace is suffering from rectovaginal fistula. That's simply a leaking hole created between the rectum and the vagina.
I first visited the Cape Coast Hospital, where I was referred to the Mankesim Hospital. There, I was scheduled for surgery, but 3 days after the procedure, my stomach began swelling up. So the doctor attended to me, but couldn't find exactly what was wrong. So he also referred me to the Kolibu Teaching Hospital.
Grace has also had her fair share of stigmatization due to the complexity of her case. She narrates some of the traumatic experiences she had had after her second surgery.
First, no more, and let me to me toilet in family by the same dear, to me and comfort on you.
When I had the first surgery, I could effortlessly ease through my anus. But now I can't. Anytime I attend nature's call, the feces pass through the hole that has been created as a result of the surgery. In fact, When I was discharged from the hospital, I realized I had lost a lot of weight. People who knew me before I had this condition always cry whenever they see me because of how I look now. At a point, I thought I would even die because of what I was going through. People rejected me whenever I get close to them because of the foul smell.
It's unbelievable how she looked even 5 months ago and the new her. Well, my guest is part of the doctors who took part in this particular operation. Dr. Gabriel Ganyaglo is an obstetrician. Oh my God, I have to say it again. Obstetrician gynecologist, trained fistula surgeon you are.
Yes,
Good morning and thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
So let's go back to when you first saw this. How many women in all?
Well, we treat quite a number,
okay,
but in this particular excerpt or clip, we are looking at about 3 or 4 patients that your documentary brought to the limelight.
Okay.
Yeah. So we do have quite a number that we've been treating.
Okay,
over the years.
And these 3 that we would see in the documentary, which will air later this evening, they've been totally cured. Is that it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Let's go back to what the condition is.
Yeah, fistula, as we have discussed in previous encounters, also in your studios, is an abnormal communication that develops between the reservoir for urine, which is called the bladder, and the birth canal. The good Lord did not design any communication to be between the two, so that the excerpts or the excrements from the body will pass through a channel out, and the birth canal will serve its reproductive purpose also separately. And then also behind that you have the reservoir for feces, and at the appropriate time you will evacuate that as well. However, when labor becomes difficult, and the common terminology we use here is when labor becomes obstructed, it's like the womb pushing the baby against a block or an obstruction. The baby can't just come out, so it gets stuck. And when the baby is stuck in the birth canal for long, then what happens is that between the bone of the pelvis and the bone of the baby's head, every soft tissue in there can die from the lack of blood supply due to pressure for a very long time. And this is where an abnormal hole develops between the reservoir for either feces or urine and the birth canal. So subsequently, there's no control. Typically, you will have urine collecting in the bladder, and at the appropriate time, the valve will open and you can pee. Now, when there's an abnormal hole between the bladder and the birth canal, then there's no valve controlling the urine, and it continues to just leak out of the birth canal.
Okay.
And so the woman is continuously wet and smelling of urine.
Okay, so this could only develop when you've gone through what you have described?
9 out of 10 times, this is the cause.
Okay. Will other people be born with it?
Occasionally, people could be born with abnormal development of the canal systems or the tracts, and those are rather rare. Probably 1 out of 1,000 or 1,000,000 births may result in something at birth like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this particular woman that we listened to had mentioned that she had gone through surgery before.
Yes.
What did that mean?
Yeah. Occasionally, the condition is so complicated and complex that it is not possible to solve it in one surgery or treat it in one attempt. In her particular case, at the initial surgery, she developed some complications, and so we needed to transfer her to a bigger facility and reschedule for a different intervention altogether. And eventually, at some point, from the fear of returning for corrective surgery, she disappeared completely until the documentary produced brought her back to light, and then we had to reach out to her afterwards. Okay. And still had to do it at 2 stages.
Oh, okay. Within the 5 months? Within the 5
months. She had actually before, I think she had, this surgery was done in May, and then we had the second one 6 weeks afterwards. So that was sometime in June. And then subsequently, she's been cured and has remained cured as far as we know up to now.
Okay, so this is something that can be corrected.
Yes, it can be corrected.
And you've proven that even with our piece.
Yeah.
So why do women go around not correcting it? Why do we still find women with this condition?
Yeah, in a lot of rural areas in Ghana where the condition is prevalent, people still believe that it is a punishment from the gods. They do not easily accept that it's a complication of childbirth. And this misunderstanding creates lots of myths and misconceptions about obstetric fistula. So once you are suffering from fistula, first the individual is abandoned because nobody wants to come close to what the gods have actually rejected or are punished. So no help comes to you. That is the first part. Then the second part is our fear of surgery. And once they learn that it is treatable, but treatable through surgery, then the other anxieties set in. In the background to all this is a patient who is smelling of urine and smelling of feces. So even the journey to board a transport or board a vehicle to the repair center, it's a formidable one. In fact, they will not even think about it because flies will expose them and people will even further become aware, or many more people then become aware that this is the condition they have. They will hide it as well as they could to avoid being stigmatized of having the condition. So all this in a complex network of poverty and lack of formal education keep them very much ostracized and pushed to the fringes in nearly all communities. So it's extremely difficult for them to come out to say, I am going for treatment. Even when you have announced that you have an outreach and you are very close to them, many will trek on foot to meet you wherever you are. And some of these will be days of walking because they cannot board a vehicle. Otherwise, everybody will become aware.
So they totally cannot control it?
No, you can't control it. I mean, just imagine for a minute that you cannot tell when you want to pee. It's something you do regularly that you take for granted and don't even think about. But just imagine for a second that you cannot control or know when you want to pee. And you just get up walking and you are wet. And you don't know how wet you are from behind, except that you find that flies are hovering around you and you know it's time to go and change what I'm wearing. If they have to go from point A to point B, they have to have 2 bags, one for wet clothing, one for dry clothing.
How do you even work?
How do you even
live? Yeah.
And she made it clear that sometimes she felt she was a rotten piece of flesh on a garbage pit or something. And that's the way they really, really feel. So it's extremely difficult. To get them out and get them for treatment has to take a deliberate effort, a conscious effort to actually reach out for them.
How many doctors worked on these women?
In Ghana, we have about 12 trained fistula surgeons.
The entire country?
The entire country. And only about 8 are very active at the moment, and 4 out of that 8 are in Kolebu Teaching Hospital. And we typically do the countrywide outreach services. I have to admit that in the case of Grace, the lady we showed in the clip, her surgery was actually led by a consultant surgeon, Kolebu Teaching Hospital, Dr. Alfred Tete.
Okay.
Because the complication was such that we needed to fall on his expertise to get the corrective processes done. And he was quite kind enough to do it for us on our calling and not on his schedule. There were a lot of other colleagues who also supported in terms of logistics, and most of the younger ones running around for her laboratory services and chasing receipts here and there because someone was paying for it. And we needed to account for every penny that we were given to spend.
I was just going to go to cost. This must be expensive. And you mentioned that people who suffer from it most are people in rural communities. So how do they manage?
Yes, and we often will talk about the surgical cost. Often nobody remembers that the patients have to be brought to the hospital to start with. And so there's a cost of recruiting the patient and transporting them to the hospital. And when they have arrived, there's also the cost of treatment. And even after you have repaired them, they don't easily get back to pick up from where they left off or from where fistula struck. they still need a programmed rehabilitation to reintegrate them into society, to make them economically independent. So there are three serious segments of costs involved. If we look at just the surgical cost alone, for her in particular, we were fortunate to have 10,000 cedis donated to us by the British and Ghana Society, and we decided that they will be spent on 2 patients.
Okay.
One, we spent about 2,000 cedis to correct, and for Grace, we spent about 8,000 cedis to correct her surgery. There's no way she can afford.
So is it for
cedis.
all the number of times that you've you've operated on her, or this is like a one-time surgery?
Oh, this is just
the
cost of the last 2 operations.
Oh wow!
This is just the cost of the last 2.
So if you put the entire,
if you put the entire cost, I haven't done the maths, it will be phenomenal.
Do we have a special fund for this? I mean, you mentioned these are private people who are donating, or private charities.
Yeah, we were fortunate in 2017, I think. Access Bank offered to pay for 100 fistula repairs.
Oh, incredible.
As we speak, we have exhausted that fund. So the rest is more of
because we have more than 100
Oh, we
patients.
have far more. We are talking about close to 1,300 new cases each year.
Wow.
You only need to travel the rural areas of Ghana and you see the impact of fistula and the devastation it is costing. It costs a lot of money. Falling on the National Health Insurance Scheme has been our only window. So we try to repair patients who have health insurance.
How far can you go if you're on health insurance?
Health insurance at least takes care of the in-hospital costs in terms of the surgery becomes waived. Of course, the premiums are far lower than the input of materials and sutures we use, but it's the only way out in terms of cost recovery. So yes, we try to make sure the patients have health insurance. And there are NGOs that go and pay health insurance premiums for them. So at least they are qualified to get into the hospitals. But when they enter, they have to eat. On admission, they could be there for about 3 weeks before they are discharged. And not all facilities feed the patients while they're on admission. So the feeding cost while on admission is also another burden. And many of the patients know this. So they will put a lot together before deciding that I want to come for surgery. And this is one of the reasons many are still wallowing in misery and not coming out for surgery. The UNFPA, which has Fistula as its flagship project, also supports the transport of the surgeons to and fro. And then the Ministry of Health generally pays our salaries. So at the end of the day, in small bits or different components, you find that in the end, we manage to treat some of the patients. But how many can you treat with this type of resources? And how far can you go? And how sustainable will this be?
I was just also going to say, for the doctors who go on these programs, when you travel outside where you are supposed to be, what's the incentive?
The incentive really is the inner satisfaction of seeing the patient like your...
That's all?
That's it. It's so beautiful, it's far-reaching, and I'm not sure money can pay for it.
It is, but it takes a lot to want to give that way.
Sure, it takes a lot to want to give, and it takes a lot of sacrifice on your part, your own energy, your strength. In occasion,
the risk also?
The risk of travel and sometimes your own resources, because you operate on a patient who can't find food. And you know without feeding, your surgery will not heal them. So sometimes, yes, we surgeons also contribute to their feeding, just so we can have a good outcome. So yes, at the end of the day, occasionally you find someone comes to say, okay, I want to give a certain stipend to doctors, but half of those we put it back into recruitment.
So for all my viewers, people who are following this conversation right now, how do we all individually, if we want to support, how do we support?
There is a fund, like I said, at the Access Bank that was used to actually support 100 fistula repairs. So if anyone is willing and interested, you could approach the Access Bank account, the fistula account, or the Ghana Health Service, or even directly, if you linked up with us at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital, we could direct or advise how you could also send your contribution.
Okay, what's the name of your unit at Kolebu?
That's the Obstetric Fistula Care Team.
Okay.
Kolebu Teaching Hospital.
And you're four doctors? 4
doctors out of the 8 active fistula surgeons in the country at the moment. Wow. I have to admit, our colleagues in the other areas are also committed to other services. You know, maternal health care is wide and broad. In some places, some are bogged down with administrative duties, so you don't find them actively on the field. But this is not to say that fistula care should be left without needed attention, but we're trying our best. We also build capacity anytime we go outside the crowd, so we train our colleagues in the regions, in the districts who are interested. And so with time, we hope that we'll increase our own capacity to deal with the situation. Well,
thank you, Doc, for what you do.
Thank you very much.
I think it's a blessing that we have, and we don't, the focus is usually not on the doctors, unfortunately, but we appreciate what you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for
very
this
much.
Miracle and the life-changing experience. And we've just had one person share her story, and it's incredible already. So thank you.
Thank you.
On behalf of all of us, well, thank you for coming through with our documentary. Our viewers will watch the full documentary later this evening. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right, stay with us, and I hope that this encourages you to do something good today. But please help. Let's try. There's so many things that we can channel our energies to. These are doctors. Remember, they are doctors who have a station, but they go beyond that to touch lives. Watch the full documentary later this evening, produced by Beryl Ernestina Richter. Now, the Super Morning Show, Joy 99.7 FM, the Super Morning Show on Joy FM is hosting the Auditor General, Daniel Yao Domalovo, on a number of issues. We're going to link up and bring that conversation live to you here on the AM show. So it's Daniel Datsi hosting the Auditor General, Daniel Yao Domalovo, on the Super Morning Show on Joy FM. Stay with us. We'll bring you that conversation in a bit.
It's been 5 months after the surgery. I'm catching up with Grace here in Accra after she attended a medical review. Grace recounts her feeling when she received the miraculous call.
In fact, that day,
when I received the call that day, I became very sad. This is because thoughts of undergoing another surgery filled my mind. But I decided to put everything in God's hands. I thank God that the surgery was a success.
She also tells me fears, doubt, and uncertainties crowded her thoughts on the day of the surgery.
Tuesday na oka said Thomas na mo fa me kono na me yemu hihime edu theater nyina na me yemu hihime.
I was very nervous on the day of the surgery. In fact, I became more frightened when I got to the theater. Today, I thank God for taking the fear out of me. I came out with smiles.
But nyame yi free me more. Me kwa me de sere na ekọ nyame adom so me de sere e diaba. Nyame na me da nase.
Grace admits some remarkable changes have happened in her life after the surgery. According to her, she no longer feels humiliated because days of houseflies hovering around her are all now in the past.
It's the first no, na me na ma bon se e once na bo me ho se obi a ma pro ade bi e da bola so na apro. By the say no, me da nyame as say since me yes.
The smell always brought houseflies all around me. But to the glory of God, that situation is over now. Because of the surgery, I can now walk with so much confidence and happiness. I thank God that He's delivered me out of this horrible and embarrassing situation.
Dear, nipa to me, you know, Miss to me, aye, and the baby and name who, Medanyamia see the blaze, send me, and nam Sakunyana so. Because now ya dear a hammy pan, not in fact, not me person me couldn't pum, crash, say me couldn't pum, and once na be to me, you miama, as I said, be a medable as Nama Pro. But I said, dear, nimpa could be a me yet to know, say Miss Met me a could be. Timmy Danyamia, passing a mere you may face our home.